Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this very special Teachers Talk Radio. I believe we're called X Spaces now, which sounds a little bit seedy, so let's just stick to Spaces. And welcome to this space, and we're going to be discussing the big breaking news of the hour, which is that the NEU has accepted the government's 6.5% pay award, 3.5% of which comes from existing school budgets. We've got a statement from the NEU which we're going to read out. We have got some reaction from the NEU's General Secretary-elect, Daniel Kebede. We've got reaction from you, teachers, because that's who we're all about. We are, of course, Teachers Talk Radio. So if you're not already, then you can see that the host of this is Teachers Talk Radio. Click on that icon and drop us a follow. And you'll be able to keep on top of all of the latest educational news, including this big story today. Obviously, we want you to take part and we want you to join in the conversation. So in the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you have the speech bubble. You can tweet us with your latest thoughts. We're going to be talking about what you've had to say so far. And if you're brave, you can press the bottom left-hand button as well, where it says request, and you can request to speak, and fingers crossed it will work. Let's go through then what the NEU has actually said. This is the statement by the Joint General Secretaries of the NEU, Dr. Mary Bousted and Kevin Courtney. They say, as a democratic union, the NEU leadership promised members that any pay and funding offer given by government that warranted their consideration would be put to them. Members have spoken very clearly and in great numbers. The NEU submissions to the STRB went a long way towards changing the government's position on pay and funding. The strike action taken by our members also shifted the dial, securing the highest pay award for over 30 years. Members should be proud they have also secured extra funding for schools. The engagement of members over pay has been high throughout this campaign, and our decisions have been led by them at every turn. The reballot for strike action comfortably passed the government's highly restrictive thresholds. Turnout for the electronic ballots on the latest pay and funding offers was also strong. This is a compelling case for trade unions in the 21st century, as well as collective action with sister unions, and it is time for the government to get out of the dark ages to get out of the dark ages and end the practice of mail-only ballots. The government should be in no doubt that we will hold its feet to the fire on delivering for teachers and support staff on workload and funding, and continue to represent the profession in future STRB consultations. It remains the view of the NEU that school and college funding is far from adequate. It remains a commitment of the NEU to campaign for further increases in teacher pay. Everyone in the school and colleges community deserves an education system that attracts and keeps teaching staff, and one that ensures every child gets the attention and support they deserve. Our campaign for a better funded education system will not go away. So that's what Mary and Kevin have had to say, the Joint General Secretaries. They've just put out a video as well, so once you've finished with us, why not go and check that out. Let's get some reaction from the Secretary of State for Education, Gillian Keegan. Gillian Keegan has said, good news that the NEU has accepted our 6.5% pay award. This is good news for teachers, good news for parents, and most of all, good news for students. On the other hand, No Mug Teacher has tweeted us and has said, bad news for teachers. in England. This really is rolling over. The profession, without doubt, will fall into greater decline. Recruitment was a huge issue. It will remain ever increasingly so. What are your thoughts, Ben, on this breaking news story that the NEU, by a margin of 86 to 14, has accepted the government's pay award? Now, let's just go through the process of the vote and let's talk about some of the alternative scenarios which could have panned out but did not. So the government decided that it would accept the STRB's recommendation of 6.5% as a pay award for 2023 to 24. Now, it's worth noting that NEU members were striking over 2022 to 23 pay as well as 23 to 24 pay, but the pay award will only cover an increase in 23 to 24. So the government decided to accept it and told the unions, all 4 education unions, 2 of which we've heard from, their members who have voted on this pay award. Those unions are the Association for School and College Leaders, ASCL, and the NEU. Now, ASCL, which is considered a more moderate union than the NEU, actually voted only by 1 percentage point higher than the NEU to accept this offer by 86 to 14. 87 to 13. NEU was 86 to 14. And what was really clear, much like the previous offer when the government offered 4.5%, 4% of which would come from school budgets, compared to this one, which was 6.5%, 3.5% of which would come from school budgets. The key thing was, if all 4 unions did not recommend to its members that they should accept the deal, Julian Keegan and Rishi Sunak said that the deal would be pulled. So the NEU, so Kevin Courtney and Mary Bousted decided that this was the best offer that their members could have got. And as some people have said, had unions not presented this offer to accept, the government would probably not have accepted the STRB and gone for a lower ball offer, perhaps going back down to 3.5%, where we started this dispute from existing school budgets. We want to hear from you. If you're an NEU member, then you need to tweet us, please. Bottom right-hand corner of a speech bubble, and we'll share your thoughts. And also, please be brave and request to speak. You can do so on the bottom left-hand corner. Are you an NEU member? Are you a member of any of the other trade unions? What are your thoughts? That there will be no strike action now until January at the earliest. The NEU has committed to no more strike action. Basically for a below inflation pay rise, and so a real terms wage cut. Business Ed has tweeted us and said, I lost 8 days pay for the union to push an offer that was worth less than a 2% increase that they themselves called an insult. I'm done. NEU have lost at least me as a member, and I suspect many more will be thinking the same. One of the key things which has come out of this is that there was a huge groundswell of NEU grassroots members and also national executive members and branches who were pushing a reject deal. And there was an NEU reject Zoom meeting where there were too many people for Zoom, and that was a big problem. But actually, it turns out that this is a tiny minority. Only 14% of NEU members, 1 in 7, voted to reject. We have our first speaker joining us, and that is Paul. A very good afternoon, Paul. How are you doing?
Hi, Tommy. Okay.
I'm very well, thank you. You've shared your thoughts on this breaking news story. Can you tell the space, please, what are your thoughts on the NEU members voting to accept the 6.5% pay award?
Really disappointed. I've been teacher for 16 years primary. I recently, sort of in the last few months, changed from NASWT to NEU as well, because they weren't really getting the threshold and things like that. And I just feel as though the deal itself is just another version of the deal that we all growled about earlier on in the year, the 4.5% one.
Well, that's the whole point, isn't it? Because the previous offer, which was rejected by 98% of NEU members, was a 4.5% pay increase, of which 4% would be coming from school budgets, and then 0.5% from additional funding. This offer, which has been accepted, 3.5% of it is still coming from existing budgets. So it's only 0.5% down in terms of the impact on school budgets. But whereas before, back in March and April, Mary Bowstead and NEU officials had dismissed the 4.5% as an unfunded or not fully funded pay offer, they're now saying that this 6.5%, which has a similar amount of money still coming from existing school budgets and being taken away from students, ultimately, they say it's a properly funded deal. How do you explain that inconsistency, Paul?
I cannot understand why our representatives have caved what seems so easily, and for a deal that's so similar to the first one, where we were all in uproar against it. I mean, I've had conversations with my head teacher. We're only a small school. I mean, we struggle as it is to sort of find ends meet, and she said herself that first deal just would have crippled the school. And this deal that's now being accepted by NEU is going to be just as bad. Because I mean, for years it was hard. It was harder to get the likes of pupil premium money. The criteria for that became more and more stringent and stingy, if you like. It was not providing schools with the funding that they needed. So they've been squeezing us for Christ knows how long, to be honest. I mean, I actually, because workload and everything else, I actually left the school that I'd been at for quite a long time to take another job, which was actually less pay, just for the sake of being able to carry on the job that I love doing. And then it's just a battle after battle. And then this is almost like a bit of a kick in the gut, in the fact that Kevin and everyone else haven't stood our ground, and we were just getting to the point where we were just getting everyone together. That's something that's baffled me in the past, is that I just don't understand why the unions of everyone involved in school hasn't come together, and we just seem to get...
Well, it's worth noting, of course, that just a couple of days before the government pulled the 6.5% out of the hat, the NASUWT did vote for strike action to join the NEU in September. 51.9% nationally, but it was a disaggregated ballot. So some teachers in some schools which met the 50% threshold could strike, and others couldn't. Let me just read while we have a few more people joining for space, and remember to join, tweet us using the speech bubble on the bottom right and request to speak in the bottom left. Let's have a look at what the General Secretary designate the next General Secretary of the NEU on a 5-year term, Daniel Kebede, has had to say about this. Kebede, of course, put his signature to the joint agreement with Kevin and Mary and the government as well, and the other 3 other education unions. Daniel Kebede has said 6.5% would never have been awarded without the 8 days of action by NEU members. We must go further, though. English teachers deserve pay parity with Scotland. We'll come on to that. Kebede carries on. He says, we need pay restoration for all school staff, teachers, leaders and support staff. This isn't just about fairness. It's the only way to save our schools. The crisis of recruitment and retention is so severe. We need urgent action on workload. Education funding is too low. We should fund our schools to the OECD average of 5% GDP. We have shown we can beat the government's anti-democratic strike thresholds. We have shown we can deliver solid and sustained strike action. In September, serious discussions will take place about how we move the campaign for education forward. We will build unity and coordinate with other education unions as much as possible. Let's take some of those points then. So Kebede says that the NEU has shown that they can beat the government's strike thresholds, where you need 50% turnout and it's a paper-only ballot. Given that this is a below inflation pay rise, Paul, at 6.5%, do you think that members will be keen to take part in strike action again if they don't think they're going to get adequately rewarded for it?
No, because I think because it's been recommended. A lot of members will go with, "Oh right, well they're recommending it, so we'll take it," and it keeps getting said that, "Oh, this was the best deal that we would get," but it's not. It's not a good deal. It's not even a compromise, to be honest. It feels as though now, because we've been told, or it's been recommended that we accept it, and we've had so many strike days before, everyone's just going to go away from it. They're going, "Oh, no more strike days now because we've had our deal." When's the next time that it's going to be to this point again? How many years will it be before we actually then get all unions together again, before we get actual government on side and at the negotiating table? It took so long, didn't it, to get to this stage where we're on the periphery of something where we can actually be strong and get a deal that actually is going to save schools, not even just improve schools, but bloody save schools. And it just feels as though the people we had representing us have just caved in.
Let's have a look at some of the other things that Daniel Kebede has said. And Mr. Booth has tweeted us and said, pay restoration won't happen now because we've just shown this government, this inept government, that we will roll over at the first hurdle. Remind me again why I sacrificed my pay for this. The tens of thousands of teachers, perhaps even hundreds of thousands, have sacrificed 8 days of pay for this. And as Mr. Booth has said, they've now just rolled over at the first hurdle. Pay restoration is a very important topic, and please do tweet us with bottom right, and please do request to speak on the bottom left. Real terms pay now for teachers in England is 25% down on 2010 pay levels. So so basically a teacher's salary has lost a quarter of its value in 13 years, and the latest pay award, which has just been accepted by the NEU, has seen a further reduction in real terms pay, down by 2 percentage points. So Kebede and Mary Bowson and Kevin Courtney have talked about pay restoration in terms of restoring teachers' pay on real terms level. Paul, but they've gone backwards here. So is pay restoration ever going to happen?
No, no, it won't. It can't. Because I mean, if you sort of go, if you think of everything just from a teacher, not even from the school's point of view, just from an individual who's a teacher and their wage and inflation and cost of living and everything else, we're a million miles behind, like everyone else who's in the public sector. You know, the public sector literally are just being told, "You've got less next year, but just get on with it. You've got less next year, but just get on with it." And that's been the case for at least 13, 14 years. Do you know what I mean?
Let's have a read of some of the other contributions that people have made. It seems to me as if the reaction has been resoundingly negative for a pay award that 86% of NEU members actually voted in favour of. It tells you a lot about Twitter as an echo chamber, really.
Well, I was about to say, Tom, just to jump in there, this is only, I mean, the reaction on Twitter says that, and I wonder whether right or wrong, and this isn't sort of any commentary on anybody who has a problem with it, but I wonder whether there are more sort of, I don't know whether to use the word activist or to use the word engaged people with the process on Twitter as opposed to not, but I wonder whether to throw that point in as well.
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Edu Twitter is only ever a microcosm of a profession, and when you look at some of, please do in September share Teachers Talk Radio out in your amongst your non-Edu Twitter colleagues, because we are leading the education conversation, and it is one way of getting teachers more engaged. Got a couple more tweets to talk about. We've got Finn Shenton has said, being a apprentice trainee this year, strike action has been a huge hit on an already meagre salary. The public is on our side at the minute. If we had rejected, I think we would have been fighting a losing PR battle. So there's some comment there in terms of accepting the offer and why that was necessary. That actually, had the NEU rejected it, it would have hit teachers' reputation amongst parents and amongst the public, and therefore any further strike action may have been detrimental. Jack Watson has said, I worry about the Tories using this in the next election. We faced record-breaking strikes and found a solution that public workers all accepted without breaking the government purse. They bullied union leaders, satisfied no one, and solved nothing. We've got many more people who have joined the conversation here today on Twitter Spaces. A very good afternoon to you all. As a reminder, please do tweet us. Bottom right hand side, there is a speech bubble. You can see that 3 people have already done that. So let's see if we can get that up to 4 or 5. And if, like Paul, you want to speak, then that bottom left hand side as well to request to speak. Let's have a look at what this looks like then in terms of teacher pay in different UK nations. Because one of Daniel Kebede's points as General Secretary Designate is that he wants to see pay parity with Scotland. So under this pay award, which has been accepted now by the NEU and ASCL, a teacher starting in England on M1 is going to earn £30,000 a year, which was a government pledge once upon a time. However, a probationer in Scotland is going to earn £32,217. When you look then at a teacher in Scotland after 6 years of service, they're going to be earning £48,516, which is over £8,000 more than England, than teachers in England on M6, who are going to be earning £40,479. Let's have a look at the TLR allowances, because I have a TLR and I have a personal investment in this. So yeah, they've all gone up by 6.5%. So your minimum TLR2 payment now will be £3,214, which I believe has gone up by about £200. The maximum for TLR2 is £7,847. For TLR1, your minimum payment is now gone up to £9,272, and your maximum TLR1 payment is now £15,690. So a teacher who's at the top of UPS and earning the top of TLR 1 could be earning now in excess of £60,000 a year, which is remarkable. In terms of the SEN allowance then for teachers, your minimum is now £2,539. Your maximum is now £5,009. Paul, numbers sound very good to some people who might be lucky enough to have a TLR or might be lucky enough to be high up on the teacher pay scales. Daniel Kebede has said that then after pay restoration, we've looked now, it's down to 25% in real terms. There's this point about English teachers deserving pay parity with Scotland, though. Why is it that a teacher in Scotland is now worth £8,000 a year more than a teacher in England? And could the NEU have done more to achieve pay parity and actually raise that point more over the course of the last few months?
Doesn't seem to have been. I've not heard it from the representatives very much at all, because obviously that would be a disparity that they wouldn't want to bring up, that they've accepted, you know. And I don't know, to be fair, I've never been to a school in Scotland. Maybe it's absolutely amazing and they're far better than the rest of us. You know, it feels a bit like, well, hang on, what job are we doing for our government that, you know, other people are maybe doing more of, or are we not doing something? So I don't understand that sort of thing, to be honest. You know, that can kind of go along with the university fees and all sorts of things, couldn't it?
Paul, do you think it also sort of, I mean, is it more sort of cynical in that, in the sense that presumably there are less teachers in Scotland, so therefore there can be more flexibility in what they can be paid?
Maybe.
I'm being a bit cynical there, but I just wonder whether in Wales and Scotland there are less teachers, aren't there? So ultimately,
does that mean that we've got more kids? So
it's not fair. I'm not saying it's fair.
But, I know.
But I'm certainly saying that seems to be the reason, really, ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very skeptical about the government anyway, as you can probably tell. And I know there's people on here far more qualified than I am to sort of know all the ins and outs. But a lot of it just seems, I don't want to say criminal, but it's not it doesn't really represent, their thinking doesn't really represent any fairness in what's been happening, you know, and what we've been offered, and the things like Scotland and Wales and the disparity between the three of us is just ignored each time. You know, it's really frustrating.
I just want to remind everybody of what Kevin Courtney said a couple of weeks ago when the news was that all four trade unions were going to accept the 6.5 offer. He said at the time, we'll continue to campaign on pay, workload and funding, but think the time is right to bank this movement. The government has moved on funding by 0.5%, the editor's note, and has moved on pay from 3.5% to 4.3% to 6.5%. There is movement on workload as well. The other interesting point that Kevin Courtney made was that he said that the Prime Minister did say that he wouldn't implement the STRB recommendation of 6.5% if the unions didn't agree to recommend it. And let's just remind ourselves what Kevin Courtney said about this. He said it was a disgraceful stance, but one he had the power to make. You have to factor in how employers react when trying to think through your own strategy. Other people, though, have said the 6.5% pay rise is guaranteed and will be implemented regardless, so you had nothing to lose by rejecting the vote. But I think the key thing is that here that NEU members could, as individuals, vote to reject the offer, but had the NEU not recommended to accept, the 6.5 would have been taken off the table. I mean, it's the joys of negotiations, isn't it? Let's see what other people have tweeted us with. Mr. D in the United Arab Emirates says, short-term gain, but England is about to lose a lot of teachers. Jack Watson has tweeted us with Susie Dent's word of the day, which is snollygoster, 19th century word, one who abandons their principles for short-term gain or power. I'm not sure it's a reference to the NEU or anything like that. I'm sure something else must have happened in the news today for Susie Dent to have tweeted that. But hey, I've been proven wrong. Let's have a look at what other people have said as well. Dougal has said, I've left the NEU already. Honestly, a leadership that enables normalising of annual pay cuts and a membership that can't be, I'll get rid of profanity, bothered to vote. For £200 a year? No. We've got Shaniqua here. Shaniqua's on her holidays, I think, and she's just left us as soon as I've mentioned her name. How devastating. We've got Daryl Lee. We've got Mr. Parker. We've got Gareth Griffiths, who's been in here for a while. We've got Lenny. We've got Mr. Booth, whose tweet we called out. We've got School Business Manager Leicestershire. We've got Justin from Naswat in Northern Ireland. We've got Mrs. Zygmunt. We have got quite loads of people, to be honest with you. So thank you very much for joining us here this afternoon. And it's worth noting, of course, that all shows by Teachers Talk Radio are sponsored by Pearson EdXL, and they have a fantastic range of new GCSE French exams coming out, rooted in learned language knowledge, and they're really designed to help those students who might not necessarily be able to go to foreign countries for their holidays by, you know, those of you who did GCSE languages in the past, you know, who might have had to talk about skiing holidays or talk about things like that. It's designed very differently to that now, and Darren Lester, one of our wonderful hosts on the Saturday morning breakfast show, has done 3 shows with Pearson EdXL talking about the importance of language learning and the Pearson EdXL's new GCSE language exams as well. So do go and check those out as well at Pearson MFL. Let's have a look and see what other people have had to say then. Lenny has said the government didn't move on pay, the STRB did, and this bit about it being conditional, I was asking at the time if it was. Not one person from the union came back to confirm. We've just been sold out. James Troughton has said, and this is why we'll never get the funding needed in schools, 86-14, madness. But it's worth noting, of course, that because of the trade union laws in this country, teachers were not technically striking about funding, they were striking about pay. And Tom Rogers, I know, has made a point about actually, you could throw 16%, which is what the NFER wanted to recommend as a way of actually improving retention recruitment. But actually, if you were to offer anything less than that, there's this whole issue of actually, is it pay that's going to keep teachers in the profession, or is it changes to workload? Now, the NEU and the other unions have said that there's going to be more focus on workload and well-being, and reintroducing the list of the tasks that teachers and leaders should not be expected to do and can be done by non-qualified teachers as well. Do you think that these issues of workload and well-being and teacher recruitment and teacher retention are going to be taken more seriously now that the NEU has accepted by 86-14 to accept the government's pay award? Let us know, please do tweet us in. Bottom right hand side you've got the speech bubble, and the bottom left you have the opportunity to request to speak as well. Paul, let's go back to you. Do you think these issues of workload and well-being are going to be swept under the carpet now that the pay award's been accepted, or do you think they're going to continue to be shouted about and actually be listened to by the government?
No, I don't think we're going to be. So I've changed tack now. I'm en route. I'm probably going to the NEU's headquarters to have a word. No, I don't think they'll be addressed at all. I can just see everything going very quiet.
I think Paul's just gone in under the tunnel on the way to the NEU headquarters. You naughty man, Paul. You horrible man. Leave them alone. They've just, honestly, it's only been 20 minutes. Give them a chance.
Let's have a look then at actually the different ballots then. So there was not one, but actually 3 separate ballots, each of which closed on Friday. So the one that we've been talking about was the electronic ballot, which saw 86% of members vote to accept. The NEU's wording here: the progress made, or the 6.5% pay award, 3.5% from existing budgets, and end industrial action. That was on a turnout of 60% for an electronic ballot. The support staff ballot, 85% accepted on a 46% ballot. You find that a lot of support staff aren't actually members of the NEU, but are actually members of other unions like the GMB and Unison as well. There was a reballot paper of teacher members in state-funded schools in England for strike action in the autumn term. This received a 53% turnout, so beating the government's 50% threshold, and 95% of members voted for more strike action. However, the NEU has said that this strike action will now not go ahead in the autumn term over 2023 to 24 pay. I mean, we have this huge issue of 95% of members on a 53% turnout have voted for something, and the union have said, well, actually, we're not going to do it now. How are those members going to feel, Paul?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not on the way to NEU. I'll give them a little bit of a break for a while, Tom. I think we're going to be disappointed. I just wanted to back up Tom's call about it being funded and conditions being looked at and things like that. I did a poll on my Twitter. We've got about 2,500 people coming back choosing one of 3 options. I asked them hypothetically about 3 different offers that could be made, and one of them, first one was 4.5 but fully funded. The next one was 6.5 with 3% funded. And one of them was 8% with 3% funded. And I'd say the vast majority actually said 4.5 fully funded, because I know people are saying, oh, well, it's not just about, conditions and everything else, but it's certainly about money that schools have got. And one way of thinking about it, if you change the word schools to children, because we keep getting told it's about the children and everything else, which it is, and we're taking money away from the children. Well, change the word schools for children. Say the children have got this money, which teachers need to be able to pay for living and everything else. So government are taking money from children to give to teachers. No wonder lots of people aren't on our side. And surely more people should be backing us up if that's the reality of the situation, that the government aren't actually giving us, as in teachers and schools, what we need to educate our children. we should have more and more people behind us, surely.
Let's have a look then at some more comments and tweets, or X's, I should say, from the teaching profession and from union members. Miss Winston has said, I fear the pay award will make people less sympathetic of teacher workload and give the media something to use against us in relation to workload. The media angle is very important to consider as well. Damien Hill has said, it was very clear cut they would accept the government if the NEU leadership hadn't recommended it. It had already been confirmed as approved prior to these results. All I can say is wife and I, both teachers, both did all strike days, and to end up with the STRB percentage is not what we expected. Now, Kevin Courtney, as Joint General Secretary of the NEU there, would disagree with that and said that the offer would have been pulled, 6.5% would have been pulled had that not gone ahead. We have got some more tweets. We've got Stephen Carley, who has said, absolutely the right decision. We go again next year, but not until January, I suppose. Far too many keyboard warriors on here proclaiming it's a sellout, etc. Read the room. We'd have lost the public support. The media would have crucified us, and the NEU would have been on their own again. Mobs has tweeted, had our foot on their throat. Shame other unions didn't come out when we did. A concerted and coordinated action across all teaching unions would have made a massive difference and outcome. And Thomas Puckett has said, what was the point of these strikes? Accept the pay rise they were always going to give us and accept that only half of it will be funded by the government. Well, here's a fun bit. The NEU are just Tory lapdogs. I will no longer be a member of this union. That will come as news to Jonathan Gullis, won't it? The NEU are Tories in disguise. It's important then because what we've seen from a lot of the tweets from Teachers' Day is there's a lot of uncertainty about actually what would have happened if the NEU had voted to reject, had recommended to reject, what would have happened if members had rejected, and actually whether this 6.5% would have happened anyway, as Thomas Puckett has said. It's worth noting that the government went from 3.5% to 4.3% to 6.5%, and there are questions, I suppose, about actually what impact the strikes did have in terms of moving the government. I'm going to ask Paul here because he's still with us, and if you'd like to join Paul as one of our speakers, please do press that bottom left-hand button. Would the government have moved to 6.5% had it not been for 8 days of strike action? What do you think, Paul?
Well, if you're looking at other parts of the public sector where they have actually, held out and they have got a better deal, then you could say that we would have. I mean, what would have happened? There wouldn't have been any pay rise whatsoever. There wouldn't have been any funding for schools whatsoever. It's hard to see that happen. And I tell you what, especially in an election year next year as well, I'd be shocked if they suddenly said, right, no, you're not getting anything. I just can't see that being the case.
Mm-hmm. It's also worth noting as well, just to support what Thomas Puckett has said, that Gillian Keegan did say back in March that if the NEU didn't accept the 4.5% or 4.3%, then the government would simply go ahead with what the STRB had said. We then had those leaked headlines, I believe it was in the Times first of all, saying that the government was preparing to reject the STRB and go for less than 6.5%. So I think a lot of people are right here, and actually I don't think there's one simple right answer on this question. Let's have a look and see what other people are saying as well. We've got a lot of people complaining that all teachers got was what the STRB recommended. The Secret School Business Manager has said, sorry, but you failed on this. STRB would have always been followed. Again, we're not sure about that. You accepted it as soon as it came on board, and no way would the government have gone against the independent body. Again, there were strong suggestions that it would. You had the opportunity at that moment to seek increased funding, but reality is accepting the offer without additional funding. As a result, you will see redundancies and a deterioration in the sector. This is really important. 3.5% of a 6.5% is coming from existing school budgets, not new money from the Department for Education or even old money from the DfE, repurposed from other areas. But 3.5% is coming from existing school budgets. And back in March and April, when the 4.5% was on the table, and only 0.5% of it was coming from new money, and the 4% was supposed to be coming from existing school budgets. You had NEU, senior NEU officials saying this was an unfunded pay rise and it could be done better. Now that 3.5% of it's coming from existing school budgets, so a 0.5 percentage point decline, Mary Bowsett in particular has said that this is a properly funded offer. So yeah, it's interesting to see that. Jesse Moore has said, it felt like we've been striking for nothing. Mr. Booth has said, I can see this being written onto Tory election campaign materials as we speak. They will spin this as having stopped the strikes just like they've stopped the boats. We need to push and remind the public the Tories stopped nothing. They just bullied their way out. Dan Fletcher has said, disappointed. I feel like the unions have sold us out. Schools are in an even worse position now. We aim for a fully funded above inflation increase. We got neither. The primary head has said, I genuinely believe the industrial action contributed to the government accepting the STRB's 6.5% recommendation, but, and this is important, it's coming from a head teacher who's involved in setting school budgets. He says these pay rises will hurt school budgets, which will in turn impact on staffing and provision. Today's NEU result will stop any new funding. Very important there. We've got feedback from a head teacher there, and that's very important because head teachers are in a very difficult position every year when it comes to school budgets. And we know that local authorities and academy trusts, most of them did tell their head teachers, you should budget for 3.5% because that's what you need to do. And that's why the NEU and other unions, including the two leadership unions, felt as if 3.5% of existing funding was okay. School Satchel has tweeted, where's the profession actually going with this? Teachers are leaving in their droves. This is not creating solutions for recruitment and retention. Schools will have problems filling positions. Children will not have the quality of teaching they deserve. If you look at initial teacher education recruitment numbers, primary sector just about on target, secondary you're about halfway there, and there are some enormous shortage of subjects like business studies, like music, like computing, like physics, which seem to be the case every year, but this year it's become even more stark. And with 44,000 teachers leaving the profession for non-retirement reasons in the last year, it looks as if we're going to have a real problem in terms of recruiting, in terms of schools recruiting new staff to start in September 2024. We do have another speaker who is hopefully joining us now, and that is old teacher dude at On the Turn Left. He's just connecting, which if you're connecting like that for a long time, it suggests we might not be able to connect him, which would be a real shame. But my fingers are very much crossed. Marina Robb says members can make their own decisions. Among the 86% who voted to accept are many who would not strike further. The strike turnout was lower than the offer turnout. Are you confident that colleagues would strike even more and that this would make them budge? This was the whole issue that was being made, and Daniel Kebedy made this point, as did Mary Bowsett and Kevin Courtney, that had NEU members voted to reject the 6.5%, they were committing themselves to an escalation in strike action in half-term 1 in September, potentially 2 or 3 days a week out of school on strike, and therefore only receiving probably half of their salary, and that this was going to hurt teachers in a cost of living crisis, which is a fair argument to make, I suppose. I should point out, of course, that if you're listening to Teachers Talk Radio for the first time, then welcome. We do have some host slots available. In fact, after we have finished this Twitter space, I'm going to be on the emails confirming 2 new hosts who are going to be starting with us in September, which we're really, really excited about. One of them is going to be hosting from Uganda, which is amazing, and we're also going to be getting a host from Australia very soon. But of course, if you live in the United Kingdom or in England, then you can host as well. Of course you can. We have some slots available on weekdays at 6 p.m. and at 9 p.m, and at weekends at 11 a.m, 1 p.m, and at 5 p.m. as well. So if you are interested in hosting your own radio show, then please, please, please do DM us and we will send you a host's information pack. Teaching with Care and Kindness has said something about eco schools, which is very important because at 7:30 p.m, Tom Rogers, who is currently adminning this Twitter space, is going to be talking about saving the environment in schools, what schools are doing or not doing that could help. So make sure you set that reminder on the Teachers Talk Radio Twitter feed. The space is called Eco Schools, the Late Show with Roger's History. And we've already had a comment in about that saying, this is so important. I'm seeing so many teachers filling classrooms full of laminated material and resources bought cheaply, undoes all the hard work of teaching about environmental issues. Keep your tweets coming, though. When it comes to the NEU accepting this pay award offer, we the second of the trade unions to accept the offer. I predicted 72-28 yesterday, so 86-14 is remarkable, really, and a lot of people have said that, and it does go to show that Twitter can be a bit of an echo chamber, with a lot of people saying reject. If you did vote to reject or if you did vote to accept, we do want to hear from you as well. The NEU had taken a total of 8 days of strike action in England since February, forcing many schools to close either in full or partially, and there will be no further strike action in the next 3 academic school months. A reminder that the Joint General Secretaries Mary Bowson and Kevin Courtney said that their union's members should be proud they have secured extra funding for schools. Let's have a look at their statement again, which is why we started the space. They said, as a democratic union, the NEU leadership promised members that any pay and funding offer given by government that warranted their consideration would be put to them. Members have spoken very clearly and in great numbers. The NEU submissions to the STRB went a long way towards changing the government's position on pay and funding. The strike action taken by our members also shifted the dial, securing the highest pay award for over 30 years. Members should be proud they have also secured extra funding for schools. The engagement of members over pay has been high throughout this campaign, and our decisions have been led by them at every turn. The reballot for strike action comfortably passed the government's highly restrictive thresholds. Turnout for the electronic ballots on the latest pay and funding offers was also strong. This is a compelling case for trade unions of the 21st century, as well as collective action with sister unions, and it's time for the government to get out of the dark ages and end the practice of mail-only ballots. The government should be in no doubt that we will hold its feet to the fire on delivering for teachers and support staff on workload and funding, and continue to represent the profession in future STRB consultations. It remains the view of the NEU that school and college funding is far from adequate. It remains a commitment of the NEU to campaign for further increases in teacher pay. Everyone in the school and colleges community deserves an education system that attracts and keeps teaching staff, and one that ensures every child gets the attention and support they deserve. Our campaign for a better funded education system will not go away. The primary head says another important point: I don't think we should let the government off the hook for publishing STRB reports and their own recommendations so late in the day. That process really needs to change to help schools set their budget, whatever they will be. Very important point that we're hearing from the STRB, with perhaps only 2 weeks of the school term to go, and it's putting lots of pressure on the head teachers who are second guessing the STRB when it comes to their budgets. So more clarification over budgets would be very important. As we know, Callum Robertson issued a Freedom of Information request to the government to ask them to publish the STRB sooner, and this was rejected on the grounds that it was going to be published anyway, and that the interests of the Department for Education were more important than the interests of head teachers and school leaders. We are going to bring this to an end, I think, in the next 3 minutes, because Kevin Courtney and Mary Bowstead are going to be talking to NEU members themselves, and I'm sure you'd much rather hear about this decision to accept the pay award and what's going to happen next from what we'd say in history are the primary sources rather than the interpretations that are being provided by people like Teachers Talk Radio. But a big thank you to Paul for joining us as a speaker and sharing his thoughts. A big thank you to everybody who's been listening in to this space. I'm not sure if we're going to publish this. We might do, we might not. There's a lot of me rambling. So it's a 50-50 there. But thank you very much for joining us live on Twitter Spaces in reaction to this news. We've been on for nearly an hour now. And yeah, if you're not following Teachers Talk Radio, then you can see us in the Twitter Space. Just one tap onto the icon and then another tap to follow and keep up with the latest news. Tom Rogers is on at 7:30 p.m. tonight. He's going to be talking about saving the environment and eco schools. Not one to miss there. Very important, especially with the changes in climate that we've seen over the last few weeks as well. And so, yeah, if you're interested in hosting with Teachers Talk Radio, please do drop us a DM and we'll send you a host pack. I've sent 12 in the last 2 days and I'm sending 2 more as soon as I get off this. So please keep those please keep that interest in hosting coming. And yeah, we will see you very, very soon on Teachers Talk Radio. A big shout out to our friends at Pearson Edexcel as well. And yeah, tune in, talk it out. See you later.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.